Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast, a podcast for anyone who finds themselves in the ambiguous adventure of young adulthood, a season marked by uncertainty, change, love, heartbreak, and a whole lot of big decisions. Sit down with me for some real and raw conversations with some incredible people as we dig into what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in this beautiful yet complicated season of life. If this podcast helps you in any way, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with friends. Be sure to join the conversation on Instagram by following goingsomewhere.podcast. We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together. Let's dive into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. Today I am joined by Drew Meyer. How are you doing, Drew?
Hey, doing well, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Glad you're here. As you may know if you're watching, we are not in the normal space.
Oh, we're not?
We're not in the normal space,
Okay.
Drew. And you know
Good-
that
good
because
to
you
know.
helped me bring the whole studio over. We got here to record, and there's construction at the church that we film at, and I thought we could get ahead of it, but we couldn't. But here we are in the conference room with the whiteboard.
That's right, man. We're
If
ready
you
to
need
go.
notes, if you need to write your notes, you can add them up on the board. But
Awesome.
Drew, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, who you are, what you do?
Yeah, sure, man. My family are in Ames, Iowa, home of Iowa State University. We've been there for 11 years, man, and married to an amazing woman named Tanya Meyer. It's Cal Thompson's daughter. Me and Tanya grew up here in Fargo, so our connection with you, goes all the way back to our undergraduate times here at North Dakota State at Fargo, here in Fargo. So we grew up here running around this church, and me and my wife were high school sweethearts. We got 4 kids. We pastor a church called Life Point Church in Ames, Iowa. So we love it, man. The Lord has positioned us in this place where we're surrounded with some of our best friends in community, running after the Lord's heart for our region, and we're seeing him do amazing things. So, man, we feel like we're living the dream.
Amazing.
Yeah. 11 years ago, we didn't know anybody in Ames, so it's crazy to see how the Lord leads and then what he can do with our yes, and we just follow his lead. So, man, it's been a dream.
That's
It
awesome.
really has.
It's kind of funny because our paths actually didn't cross while we were students.
Yeah.
You had pieced out by that time.
Dude, I'm an old man.
When I got here, I think it was the year after you left. So it was just like, oh, Drew Meyer, Tanya. And I'm like, who are they? But my first actual memories of you are from a youth convention when I was like a teenager.
No way.
And we would come to Fargo for youth convention.
Okay.
And this is my memory, and you're probably gonna laugh a little bit, but it was up in like the kids worship area, and you and Tony and your band
No way.
did like I don't know how you would define your music at that time. Was it
we called it indie rock.
indie
but,
rock? Yeah. It was like
melodic guitars. I mean, it was fun, man. We had a lot of fun playing music, and
it was
yeah.
it was a
That's
cool.
fun.
I mean, youth convention is like these big services and all this stuff, and then the after parties like dodgeball, and then you could go listen to like this sweet indie rock band that I didn't really know any of you at the time. And then as I was getting to know you, I was like, oh, those were the band.
Oh,
That
those
was
are
the
fun.
band.
Those are fun days, man. Yeah, and we played our last show like right before I graduated, and we left. So pretty crazy.
The band is no longer together.
No, it is no longer, man. We put it to rest, and those are fun days, though, man. For sure.
That's awesome.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yep, that's my first memories of any Meyer boy. But
That's awesome.
Obviously from afar, I've been able to connect with you. You were working with Chi Alpha for a while, and so we would cross paths there. And I just remember a car ride that we had from a bowling alley. Do you remember
No.
that?
In Des Moines.
Yeah, we were in Des Moines.
for Light Conference or something.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And we were just driving. This is like the first time that I ever sat down with Drew. Like this was the first time that I had like one-on-one alone time with Drew, and you were just kind of sharing your heart and sharing like what God had been doing in your life. And I left like inspired to love Jesus more. I was at a point in my Chi Alpha journey where I was just kind of like, I knew I wanted to do Chi Alpha at the time, but I didn't know how to go about it. And you just kind of brought kind of a new spark of like, oh, okay, like God's doing incredible things, and I have people I can look after and go, all right,
Yeah, cool.
we're running this race together. So I just appreciate your influence from afar, but also every conversation we do have is really special. So
yeah, that's awesome, man.
I've been happy. I've been excited to have you on the podcast because you're not a Fargo guy anymore. So I'm like, when am I going to get him on? I don't want to do virtual, and you and your family are in town for a big family gathering, and I got to come last night, and here you are at 6:30 a.m. is what most people don't know.
That's right. Yeah, it's early, man.
Yeah.
Nothing for you.
Oh,
you're glossy-eyed all the time. So
well, yeah. When I left, my wife was up feeding the baby, so just warrior. But why don't you just kind of jump into maybe your story a little bit? I want to kind of get to the point of, your young adult journey and kind of what God's been doing and what you would share with young adults. But I think your story obviously starts a little bit earlier than that. Just want to give a summary of kind of like what made you as a man, like who you are today.
Yeah, I mean, you say I'm not a Fargo guy, but man, Fargo is such a dear place in my heart. So I always feel, even though we've been gone for, my wife now going 15 years. This winter will be 15 years we've been married. Like Fargo has such a dear place in our heart because it was, here the Lord really met us in significant ways and turned our lives upside down. And so many people influenced us and poured into our lives to make us the people that we are today. So Fargo has such a dear place in our hearts, man. And it's in our college years where obviously the Chi Alpha community was massively impactful for both me and my wife. The Lord did a lot in my heart. I knew the Lord before coming to North Dakota State. I grew up in the youth ministry here. Pastor Cal was my youth pastor. So I was dating his daughter, and so I loved Jesus genuinely. I really did. I don't need to change my testimony to make it more of a wow factor, but I really did love the Lord. But what I hadn't really overcome before coming to college was like these deep insecurities about how the Lord could use my life. And so it was at North Dakota State. At that time, NDSU Chi Alpha was small. We met in the Prairie Rose room, 30 students going after Jesus. I got surrounded by community. I got really a spiritual father, mentor through Pastor Brad that I always knew. Pastor Brad, he actually took me under his wing when I was in middle school. So like this guy had began to pour into my life. But it was in my college years where the Lord began to root out some deep insecurities in me that I always had. I was, studying engineering at North Dakota State. So like my personality bent is more content, more introverted, which that's still my personality.
Right.
Lord didn't change my personality, but sometimes I'd use my personality as an excuse to hide. I'd use my personality as an excuse as to like why God can't use me. And so it was in my college years, man, where the Lord began to root that out of me. He really did. It was in a Chi Alpha small group where my friends began to challenge me to be used, to step out and share my faith with people. And it was in that environment where Pastor Brad began to pour into my life and began to share with me that I could actually share the gospel with my friends. And so we began to see, my friends come to know Jesus.
Right.
It says that I brought students to Brad, or would talk to Brad about friends that I have and wanting them to receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. He'd be like, well, Drew, you can pray for them to receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And he taught me how to do that, Right. And so it was in our Chi Alpha small group that I began to see my friends receive the baptism of the Holy Spirit. And I began to realize, God can use me. Like in my own unique package, like God can use me. And it was in the fires of those environments where the Lord turned my life upside down. And Chi Alpha just began to like explode as well. I mean, those were the years where Chi Alpha was really growing in huge ways. And we moved from the Prairie Rose room to Century Theater towards my junior and senior year. And so we left Chi Alpha just as it felt like the Lord was doing something big, something so beautiful. And it was kind of painful for us to leave. But we graduated, so you got to leave. You got to move on.
You got to go. Well, actually, don't. I just stayed as staff for 6 more years after that. But
there you go. Yeah. But even in those days, like there was no internship with Chi Alpha. There was no. he had just hired Tony, my brother, Pastor Brad had, but me and my wife, we graduated with our degrees from North Dakota State, and we're like venturing out, trusting the Lord. There was this sense in my heart that like my career path would not be engineering forever.
Okay.
Like I really had this sense that, man, I'm a nerd. I still am. I enjoyed engineering stuff, but there was something that happened in my life in those undergraduate years where, man, I just wanted to give myself to that, to being in the trenches with people, discipling people shoulder to shoulder, and pouring into them in that way and leading communities. And so me and my wife, we moved out to Seattle. I got a job as an engineer, nuclear engineer for the Navy. And
just a nuclear engineer for the Navy. No,
I just picked up a job.
No big thing. I just picked up a flyer at
That's right.
McDonald's and found a place. So
yeah, I mean, actually, ironically, they had come to NDSU. The Naval Shipyard had come to NDSU for years. So like I actually worked with other NDSU alum out there in Seattle.
Oh, okay.
So
that's cool.
So like they really had this thing for NDSU. They wanted the NDSU grads to come out. And so, man, we went out there. We didn't know anybody in Seattle, but it was in that place that the Lord began to show us how important it was for us to take initiative and create community wherever we go.
Right.
That we couldn't sit back, we couldn't sit back passively and just allow community to come to us. That first summer we were out there, it was like a difficult season of trying to discern, where our church home would be and what that would look like. And so it was lonely. We didn't know anybody. And so
what was that? You mentioned it, like you were leaving Fargo, Chi Alpha, kind of like the boom period. And I was coming in during that, like you're talking about, and I think a lot of people that are from Fargo that were part of Chi Alpha, they were a part of like the 300, 400 student movement. And sometimes we forget, like there was this period of time where there's 30 students just becoming more and more desperate for God. Mm-hmm. And what was it like for you to leave that and go to, you said it was like hard, but
it was,
what was that transition period like for you and Tanya?
Well, at first we flew back a lot. I mean, I remember that. I mean, it was like, we had these encounter nights of worship. Yeah. Tanya was singing with worship, and we'd fly back for everything. It seemed like every wedding, every encounter night. And we began to realize, like, one, that's not sustainable. And then two, that's probably not ideal in terms of like where the Lord has planted us too. So I think there's tons of grace there, and it was fun doing it when we could. We didn't have kids. We were, two income, working jobs in the marketplace. But the Lord hadn't called us here. He called us elsewhere. And so we had to embrace that. And that naturally came, honestly, like that embrace of the new chapter came naturally once we discovered where the Lord had called us in terms of community out there.
Right.
And that first summer, it was so painful. I mean, I remember we went to probably a dozen different churches, just like really prayerfully trying to figure out, God, where do you have us? Like, not church shopping. Genuinely, it was not church shopping. We didn't have a checklist or anything. It was genuinely like, we want a covenant with another group of people, regardless of the size or whatever. Like we need to find our people somewhere. And so we spent that summer like in that kind of frame of mind. And towards the end of that summer, then we found a community and church of 300 or 400, across the water from Seattle. So just west of Seattle and Bremerton. And then we stuck it out there for the next 3 years. Okay. Until the Lord moves us on. But
when you were in that season, do you remember like what were the factors that you were, you said you went to 12 churches, and I think you said it, there's a difference in like church shopping of like I'm just discontent and I want to find the better
serve me
but when you're moving to a new environment, like you're just trying to find like a place to root yourself. So what was kind of that process like what were you and Tanya talking about in the car after church, driving away, or like on the way there? Like what were you looking for, and what made you find the church in?
I think only the Lord. Bremerton is the name of the city. But the Lord knows the motivations of the heart. So, like genuinely, we didn't feel like we had this list of particulars that we were looking for in terms of programs or type of building or worship styles or something. For us, there were these almost intangibles, but they are tangible, of like authentic community, people that genuinely want to do life with you.
Yeah.
Like we've both had a deep conviction of community that's immersed in prayer and like an atmosphere of prayer and expectation. And that's what we experience at North Dakota State as well. Like even my sophomore year, there was a group of students that began to meet early morning for prayer. And I believe it was many of those like elements of intently seeking the Lord that really sparked much of what took place. But like there were things like there was this atmosphere of hunger for the Lord that we were looking for and we're desiring for. And so by the time we stepped in the church, where we ended up really locking arms with leadership and stuff, it was in that Sunday morning service when we just felt the presence of the Lord, which I can't translate that to anybody else. Like other people that are trying to find that community. That's like, you just felt like, okay, this is where we're going to be. This is our home, you know?
Yeah.
And the church itself wasn't a perfect church. There is no perfect church, but there was this sense of faith for what could be. And there was this sense of the Lord's hand is on this place. And I think those things were the things that drew us there. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
I think that I feel like when I reach out to, whether it's the listeners of the podcast or just Kyle alumni that I'm still in contact with, that's typically one of the first questions is like how to find a church.
Oh man, yeah, that's such a tough season.
It's such a difficult thing, especially when you come from something that's really life-giving and empowering, and you have these mentors, you have these people that you were alongside, seeing God do some incredible things, and it's hard to not compare. It's hard to not, go, okay, I'm never going to find anything like that again, but to really step into something. And I think sometimes reduce the laundry list of like, all right, I need a pastor figure to be in his 60s who will sit down on the couch with me and wear a polo and, his
Wranglers.
and his Wranglers. But I think, so that was part of our story out in New Jersey was we kind of plugged into a church that a lot of our friends were at, and there's a lot of things that we loved about it. And it was like, we immediately found some people that loved us, but it wasn't the church that, like, if we were to just go in a blank slate and just kind of discover some churches, and then COVID happened, and then that church had ended up staying closed for a while. And so we came back from a break here in North Dakota. We're like, we need to plug into a church and in person again.
Yep.
And we walked through the doors of this church called True North, and it was just like, the people immediately took us in, and we were invited to a small group, and we got to be like new people in a church that knew nobody for the first time in our lives. Like when I came to Fargo, my brother set me up with all these friends,
Dave, man, I remember.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And same with, that first church. Like, it was great. There's people that were at that first church that we love and will forever stay in community or connection with. But the second church was just all people that knew nothing about us and just loved us. And, we could just sense the presence of God. And they did these things called Fight Night that we've adapted and stolen. But where the church came in, and it wasn't just like the 40 people that love prayer and worship. It was the whole church coming in, kids in the worship center, and just pressing into the presence of God for the night. And like Taylor and I, we knew we were moving back at this time. So we were experiencing all of this knowing that it was a limited season of our life. But I remember us driving home one night being like, let's just lean into this and just see what God will do, and then bring home whatever we can with us, because it was we were there for 4 months, and it was deeply impactful. Yeah. But I think that like part of the young adult story is such a challenging
thing, man,
and discouraging. It can be discouraging.
And for us, there was this sense that we had to shift our mind a little bit. Like we felt like the Lord had called us to that community, like that church. The name of it was Hillcrest, and the pastor had just gone through a number of health issues. He was like late 40s, early 50s, but just gone through some major health issues. And we didn't realize that. Yep. Until after, like, the Lord really kind of confirmed it in our hearts that this is where we should be. This is going to be home for us. And we began to realize, like, the Lord brought us there to be an encouragement to Him, to help kickstart community. There wasn't much for young adults. So, like, hey, this is an opportunity for us to kickstart community for young adults and help bring life into a church that it was going somewhere. I feel the Lord's hand was on that place. But like we did have to change our mindset from like, oh, we're just coming to receive, we're just going to be passively sitting in the back, to the Lord's positioned us here for a reason.
Yep.
And the Lord's imparted something into our story, into our lives for a reason as well,
Yep.
you know, and to bring that other places. And so like, man, our mind had to shift, but it was beautiful what the Lord did in that season. We started gathering in our home, like the very DNA of Chi Alpha.
Yes.
Like that's what we brought to the local church. And we just started gathering in our home with young adults for Bible study, eating meals together. And what we realized out in the Northwest is how lonely people were, especially young adults, and so lonely. And we live near a Navy base and a naval shipyard. So like the transient, like come and go was so normal for them, for the whole city, but specifically for young adults as well.
Yeah.
Because most people in that demographic, they're only there for 3 to 6 months and they're out. So those that are there longer, man, they get pretty disenfranchised by all that and just lonely. So man, community was pretty easy. It was just like opening up our lives and our home to people. And man, the lonely people just flocked. And so we packed out our little condo there on the water with young people. And
amazing. And
there's a number of times this guy named Brad, he like looked around, he's like, man, I've never experienced anything. What is this? Like, I've never experienced anything like this. This is amazing. And all we were doing was eating meals together and playing games and hanging out in our home, you know, and gathering around the Word of God, and like very simple community. That's what it was, but it was beautiful. And those are dear times. So
for the person that's like in that place, maybe they've moved away, they're living in a place where, you know, they're a part of a church, but they don't know where to start. Like, what would you say, like where to begin? And I mean, you alluded to just like the simplicity of,
dude, do what Brad told us to, make a friend, you know?
Yeah.
Like just genuinely, we felt like we so intently pursued people, you know, we'd see somebody sitting by themselves at church, specifically like a young adult. We'd go start a conversation, invite them to coffee. And that's where like some of our dearest friends came from.
Wow.
That simple invitation, that simple, for them, what would be left field, it would be like, they're not expecting an invitation to coffee or an invitation for a meal afterwards. But those are the ingredients for community that are oftentimes absent in the local church, sadly. But that's the reality. And the Lord has marked like people like you, like me, like the Lord's marked us in such a way that I feel like we can't go back to like the status quo. Like we've set the tone for like a spiritual fervor and passion for the Lord. And that translates in conversation over coffee with somebody, or like the conversation naturally goes towards the things of God and the kingdom of God and what He's doing in people's lives. And that becomes like the centerpiece of community as well. So one thing I will say, like being that like our mindset was like so much we felt in that season was to give out and to like to serve that church and to serve that pastor and like help him.
Yep.
Because we weren't just doing what we were doing with young adults and in worship, and I always had a passion for corporate prayer. So like we were starting prayer meetings. We were also helping out with the youth. So we were going for it, man.
Yeah. Just
gangbusters. But the Lord was so gracious outside of the church that we had there in Bremerton to like supplement stuff that we maybe we weren't receiving there. He supplemented it elsewhere. Like the Lord was so gracious so generous to bring in outside voices at times. Like we connected with a community down in Tacoma, which is just south of us, south of Seattle, south of Bremerton as well. And man, they were just a fiery group of Jesus lovers that were probably more on par with where we came from in terms of their spiritual just passion for the Lord and an even sense of what New Testament community looks like. And they just became like an unexpected outside voice of encouragement to us. Be like, okay, yeah, like the Lord sees what we're doing here and finds delight in it, and kind of became that encouragement that we needed. Because sometimes we just felt so distant from Fargo, from our family in Fargo, and so kind of on an island too. Like, okay, we're just going for it, and sometimes you just need that whatever, that Barnabas to encourage you and come alongside
sure.
you and pour into your life. And so the Lord supplied that as well in other ways, surprising ways. And so many relationships from that season, man, dear to our hearts. So
That's cool. And I think just that, even the struggle, when I talk about young adulthood, I also talk about like the struggle of, it's so ambiguous. It's always changing. There's so many big decisions and stuff. And I think it, at some point, can beat you down a little bit. It can be discouraging when things don't happen right away.
Oh, 100%.
And so I think there's just that level of when you zoom back out, though, because if you don't lose focus or you don't lose steam in that, you get to zoom out and go, wow, this is how God came, like this group of people in Tacoma, Washington that we just stumbled upon. Like they encourage, like those are the stories that we look back on in our faith 10, 15 years later. I'm prepping to preach on Joshua at church in a couple weeks. And, I was just reading about like how they set up the memorials at the river when they crossed, to always remember what God did and bringing them through. And I just think that there's those pillars in our life that it's oftentimes in the hard moments. It's oftentimes in the things that God worked out in our hearts and worked out in our lives that didn't seem like there was a way that we should set up the memorial and say, look what God did. And when I'm discouraged again, I can look back at that. Yeah. And I think that's sometimes like young adulthood is like memorial building in a way. It's reminding ourselves of what God's done in the past and seeing his faithfulness come to fruition again and again and again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when life's easy, you don't have those opportunities to see the generosity of the Lord, but it's like in moments of need, it's in moments of where you're stretched and moments of even desperation where like the Lord's generosity is so evident. And I'm so thankful for his grace in my life and the way he sustained us. Because there were it's easy to go and share those stories and even like
the highlights are easier to
but like in order to build a memorial, like you had to walk through something difficult. Like you had to walk through something that really you needed the power of God to move on your behalf. And there were real seasons of loneliness and isolation and discouragement and feeling like, Lord, why are we here? But the Lord is good, man. He's so good.
In that season, you were also working as a nuclear engineer, and so you were in the marketplace for this period of life. What was that experience like for you guys? Working in the marketplace, obviously you were at the university setting, which is a marketplace environment. Now you're a pastor, so it's a little bit different. But what was that experience like for you guys?
It was difficult. There was so much about it that was difficult for us. Like I said, I enjoyed engineering work. It was like the nature of engineering work is it takes a lot of people to care about a lot of very minute details in order to pull off something pretty epic, and that's the essence of engineering. And so, like we were dismantling nuclear submarines, nuclear reactors for submarines, packaging up these reactor compartments, and in order to pull something off of that caliber, these 1,500-ton packages, you have to have a lot of nerds that care about a lot of minute details, and so like the essence of it was very, very monotonous, very mundane in terms of like the level of detail that we had to care about. Somebody has to care about, if it's not going to cause serious damage. So, so I oftentimes felt like, man, what is my life amounting to? Like I'm giving hours and hours and hours in this week to something that like is literally just going to be documented on this white paper somewhere and going to be stuck in a file cabinet, or is needed for some regulatory purpose. And just felt like, Lord, what am I doing in my life? This is so pointless. Like I want to give myself to reaching the lost and discipling communities and what am I doing? But it was even in that environment, honestly, the Lord would surround me with either an opportunity for myself to pour out or an opportunity for me to receive encouragement from somebody. So my mentor, like that just sovereignly the Lord connected with me. So my engineering mentor was this on fire believer who was a former YWAM guy and loved what he did, for years, for 30 years he was there. Right. I only met it for 3 years, but he poured into my life and encouraged me a lot, and just how to be a man of integrity, how to be consistent, how to love my wife well, all those things that matter. And then he showed me how to be a good engineer as well. So not to mention all the opportunities to obviously be an influence and to just bring in a culture into the work environment that's positive and encouraging, words of encouragement that bring an energy that's helpful and not the opposite.
Well, I'm sure working in the marketplace for a season has helped you as a pastor, leading people that are in the marketplace too. Like, I think there's that level of, not like you can stand and say, hey, I was there, I did this, like do it how I did it, but you at least have like a relatability that maybe some pastors don't have, that went to seminary, and like, not that any of those things are bad, but like they go from pastor job to pastor job. And I think having that experience for me, like Pastor Dave Liedall, who's the pastor here, was a pharmacist for a decade. And so like working in a secular environment with leadership responsibilities that I will never understand, like what was at stake with decisions he was making, but I value like that connection, that he can have with me or anybody else. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. And I think that is a gift to the church. I think it's a gift to the body to have voices that can speak into the opportunities and just like the importance of being people of the kingdom, being people of integrity in those places. So, but yeah, I mean, there was much about it that was difficult. Honestly, there was much about it that was tough. Every day in, day out, when you feel like you're bored out of your mind, or like the work that you're doing has no value. Like to see what the Lord's doing, or to be willing to be open to how the Lord wants to use you in an environment that isn't super glamorous. No one's, at least very rarely, people are patting you on your back. It's like, I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing. So, and that's honestly how we learned our lesson out there. Some huge lessons for us while we were out there in terms of like the Lord's next steps for us was when we first moved out there. Honestly, we just felt like we were on a grand adventure, which we were, following and leading the Lord. And so at first, like, we were not at all good with our money. We were not
flying back for every event wasn't sustainable.
Oh no, I guess not. And at that time, flights were like $600 to go from Seattle to Fargo. So it was like, man. So for both of us, over $1,200 just to fly back for one event. It's so stupid. But we began to realize like that our actions weren't in alignment with what we were saying we were called to. So like we both sensed that we were going to be eventually working in vocational ministry in some sense, whether that's nonprofit or local church or missions. We were open to the gamut.
Yep.
We had no idea where the Lord would take us, but like oftentimes our actions were not in alignment with that. Like we would go to the city a few times a week. Or exploring, which all that stuff is fun, but it costs money. And month after month after month, we realized like we're just spending all the money that we're bringing in, and we're not actually gaining any traction towards what we feel like the Lord's called us to. So, which the Lord is so gracious in that I don't try to be hard on myself to beat myself up, but there is this sense that we can sometimes over romanticize the call of God on our lives, and we put it off in this like distant horizon, just assuming that the Lord's gonna bring it about sovereignly, force his hand in our life, open the doors, and these things are gonna come to us on a silver platter. And there's like no participation on our part, when in reality it's always a partnership with us. The Lord that's his greatest intent.
Yeah,
it's not so much accomplishing the things. The Lord's gonna accomplish his things with or without us. It's the partnership of our hearts that the Lord's looking for. And so it was in that season that the Lord was calling us to participate in his plan of him maturing us and also preparing us. And so it took us like a good 9 to 12 months to figure out that, okay, we need to start being smarter with our finances. And so we had student loans. We were living in a super nice condo, all those things, and began to realize we just need to be smarter. So we read Dave Ramsey, Total Money Makeover, man. We began to realize like we need to pay off our student loans. We need to start preparing ourselves if we really feel like the Lord's calling us to this.
You knew that was in your heart. So you knew that God was doing that, and
So then, man, then we went gangbusters. It was like 16 months, and we paid off $26,000 in debt and prayed this prayer, essentially saying, Lord, wherever you want to take us, we'll go. Wow. Then there was a season of waiting. Then it was a season of like testing things as they come,
yep.
opportunities as they come, like realizing, that's not where the Lord's leading us. And both Tanya and I, we were working with an organization called Youth for Christ, which they have ministry around here locally, but out in the Northwest, that's where they're headquartered. Okay. So they had ministry in detention centers, with homeless youth. They had high school outreaches that they did. So we had an opportunity to go work with them full time. And that was like the first opportunity then in the marketplace where we had the opportunity to make the shift towards vocational ministry that we thought potentially was like,
right.
That's where the Lord had us. But so this seemed like no brainer. Okay, this is what we're both already working with them, and we have this opportunity to go into it full time. And it was then in prayer where the Lord clearly spoke to me and told me essentially it was a closed door. And it's so surprising. It just seemed like in the natural and the logical, like that would have been where we would go. But the Lord, we just had to trust the Lord, like right. His timing and what He wanted. And so we're back to waiting. And then we started getting just some open doors with Chi Alpha. And so
yeah,
that's when we got a phone call from Iowa, which is crazy now, man. Like, so back then we're in Iowa now, but back then we didn't know anybody in Iowa. So we got a phone call from a church in Iowa that they want to start a Chi Alpha at Iowa State University. So home to 30,000 students and no Chi Alpha. And so, yeah, the rest is history now, but that's kind of a wild season, right. Like discerning the leading of the Lord. Like there can be really logical opportunities that aren't the Lord's best for your life, and being okay with that.
Yeah.
Like being able to like trust the Lord's timing and not rush things. I'm so thankful that like I didn't get ahead of the Lord.
Yeah.
And like just operate out of my mind, So
right.
So thankful for His grace because the Lord's gracious even to redeem that stuff.
For sure. Well, and when we were kind of in the process of praying through what we were going to do,
yeah, man.
And moving out to New Jersey, one of the things, like, we really started to feel like God was calling us, but it wasn't necessarily like, we always thought we were going to be in Fargo forever. We thought we were going to be working with Chi Alpha forever. Mm-hmm. And we loved that. Like, that idea to us was exciting, fun, yeah. But we just had this, like, growing feeling in our hearts and our spirits of like God's doing something new. And it was Dick Schroeder. I met with Dick Schroeder. Wow. Legend of a man.
Yes.
I think I went to him probably like, Dick, tell me what I'm supposed to do. Yes. Like, what did God
That's
say?
What we want.
Yeah. But I just remember Dick just like sitting quietly and then just saying like, Stephen, you know the voice of God.
Wow.
Listen and trust that you've been hearing God's voice for a long time now. Like, you can trust that what He's saying is good. And it wasn't like that was like the moment that it all had clarity and it all made sense. But I kind of came back to that time and time again of like, I've been, working to build this relationship with Jesus. And I've been, prioritizing intimacy with Him. And why would He lead me astray? Like, even, in hindsight now, or like looking back on it, like our 2 years was nothing like we expected it to be on the East Coast. Like, COVID happened 6 months in. And yeah, we see God's hand and His faithfulness and like how He really reformed our view of church. Like, He reformed our view of just community. Like, we had an expression of it in college that was so beautiful. And and then we feel like God was showing us how to do it in a neighborhood and how He was showing us to do it with people that were strangers at first, and all these things. Yeah. And so it's just like this, for us, 2 years of aha moments, but also mixed with the hardest times of our life and discouraging, having a baby away from family and then airlines just being shut down for extended periods of time.
Yeah, in the midst of a pandemic, man.
Yeah, most of our family didn't meet Summit until he was like 4 months old. And, so it's just all these things that were just so different than what we had expected. And it wasn't like we got there and we were like, God, why did you lead us here? We know, like, this is why you led us here. You're doing something new in our hearts and new in our lives. But discerning God's voice is something that it's like, it sounds hard.
Yes.
But like, that call to relationship with him and call to walk with him. And I actually read your book, Discovering the Power of Prayer, and like it's.
Or I just teach everyone how would I hear from Lord clearly about these huge.
No, but the book itself is really incredible.
It's an invitation into intimacy, which you can't teach the person the mechanics of a relationship with the Lord.
Right.
It's like my heart is that people hear the clear invitation from the gospel into personal relationship. It's in those places that you begin to discern the voice of the Lord. So for yourself, but
your book is 12 like principles,
12
and
truths,
they're very short to read and very impactful. And I think you've done a great job of making it clear, because it's not, you're not just saying, all right, step 1 is this, step 2 is this. Like you said, it's an invitation to that intimacy. Yeah. And I think that's something that for so many,
and no one else can have a relationship for you. As much as we want to go to that sage or that prophet and that person just tell us the Lord's future for our life, that's not a relationship. It short circuits the Lord's largest, biggest purpose for your life, which is relationship with him. Is your heart being completely his. That's his biggest intent. It's not accomplishing these purposes or other purposes or goals or the things that we all get enamored with. It's your heart. That's what he wants.
Wow.
He wants to rule and reign in your heart and have a friendship with you, and so that can't be short circuited by those things. So it's encouraging, man.
Yeah, and that's for me, that's a powerful thing too, is that nobody should ever stop discerning God's voice in their life. And I think there's times where we get through college and maybe we settle into a career path that is really comfortable, or for some engineering, hey, I've wanted to be an engineer. I'm an engineer. I love my job. I'm paid well. Here I am. But even to continually discerning God's voice, whether that's, sometimes when you talk about discerning God's voice or hearing God's voice, you tend to think the big things, where do we live? Who do I marry?
Yeah, big crossroads, yeah.
But I think it's an everyday, every moment, God leading us through our days and through our lives in a relational way that just draws us closer and closer to him. Yep. That's really special.
I think it's the day-to-day stuff that prepares us then for those big moments. It's like cramming for a big exam if you're not cultivating that relationship day to day. So, and so for us, when we moved from Seattle to Iowa, in those 3 years, the Lord had taken me deep into the fires of intimacy with him that I never knew was possible. I think partially uprooting us from deep community here in Fargo, where you can see a glimpse of the Lord's heart for family and community, New Testament community, but you can also grow reliant on the constant encouragement from people and affirmation from people for what you're doing and whatnot. And so for removing us from that was so good to call us into a deeper level of intimacy, of just dependence on the Lord, intimacy in our marriage. All those things are added benefits of sometimes, removing you from community as well. And then also putting the ownership on us to initiate community. But it was in that season of 3 years where, the Lord took me deeper in intimacy, and, getting up early to spend time with the Lord before I'd go to work, beginning to, now as an adult where you don't have so much free time like a college student, but in the real world with more limited time, beginning to create these pillars of rhythm in my life that prioritize the things of the Lord, and his heart for my life. And I think that's what prepared us then to trust him when he opened the doors elsewhere. So, crazy, man. For
sure. And just kind of in closing, obviously you're in Iowa now. You were working with Chi Alpha for a while, and did some incredible things. I know the Rosingers are incredible leading that campus now. But just want to talk about your church just for 5 minutes.
Oh, sure.
Because I was able to be there just a few months ago, and just what God's doing is very evident to the outside. I think it's you can talk to your friends and oh yeah, God's doing stuff at my church, and this is incredible, and I don't deny that or doubt that. But then when you go to a place and you can just immediately sense a fresh wind, something is happening here. And now as Taylor and I we just looked at each other this is special. This is something that's really significant. In the kingdom of God. So do you want to talk about just how your church has maybe transitioned and what God's been doing?
Yeah, so man, we've been there for 11 years. So this has been a long road for us of being faithful.
It wasn't just like
no, it
last
wasn't
Tuesday.
instant. Yeah, we just didn't walk in and be like,
yeah.
revival is here.
Yeah,
Which, you can feel like that's the way it's supposed to be or the way it is. But it's man, we should have learned that from even Pastor Brad's example in our life, where I mean, he's just been faithful here for all these years.
Yeah.
Faithful to certain convictions and values, and you serve those things and serve the Lord and allow the fruit to be in the Lord's hands. And so the last 11 years we've been there, part of this local church that also hosted Chi Alpha, that wanted to pioneer Chi Alpha at Iowa State. So we led Chi Alpha for 7 years, 7 full school years. Before the church, they wanted us to be lead pastors, and so we, at first resisted the idea, but as we prayed about it, we really felt like the Lord's hand was on it for the sake of having a healthy place for Chi Alpha and having an opportunity for college students to catch a glimpse of intergenerational ministry, the broader body. And so that was in 2017 that we made the leap to be lead pastors as we finished up our 7th school year at Iowa State. And so ever since then, it's been, this is a church that's been around for a long time. And there was a lot of healing that needed to take place. There was a lot of trust that needed to be built. Fortunately, we had 7 years of relationship with most people there.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like a new voice for them, but we just did what we felt called to, which was like lay the foundation of prayer. So that's kind of the backstory to why I wrote the book, Discovering the Power of Prayer, was this conviction that I needed to like really convince our congregation that prayer was not going to be just a thing we do every once in a while, or a thing that we talk about because that's what pastors are supposed to talk about. Like This was going to be the groundwork and the ground level of everything that the Lord is going to do in this church. So I hosted a week of prayer, which, growing up here in Fargo, they had hosted weeks of prayer every year.
Yep.
And they were impactful for us. But my first year, we hosted a week of prayer, and it was just my family that came. Like we advertised it, we promoted it. No one showed up. It was just me and my family. We're like, all right, like wow, we're passionate about prayer here, and we have some work to do. And like in terms of grounding our church family in the necessity, not an obligation of prayer, like not like putting a yoke around our neck, but more so a conviction that this is the way the Lord has chosen to reveal himself to a people and to work in our community, is through a people submitted and surrendered in prayer. And so then I went to work later that fall. So this was like 9 months later after that week of prayer that was a flop. I wrote this book in a matter of weeks. Like, okay, I want to write a book to our church. So my intent with the book was never to like, mass, it wasn't for mass distribution. It was like, and that's the way it's written. It's written as like a tool of discipleship for our church. Yeah. So like that's the audience that was in my mind the whole time as I was writing it, was like, how do I convey the Lord's heart in the thorough, like biblical backing for, in a language that's translatable to people, to everyday believer, the Lord's heart for prayer. And so that's when I wrote that book in a matter of weeks. And I gave it out in November. We just gave it away to everybody in our church. And they were convinced, okay, this guy, he's serious about prayer. Like he's not just talking about it because he's a pastor. He wrote a book about it. Okay. And I obviously could have handed them, a dozen other books that other people have wrote that were way better about prayer, that were impactful in my life. But the fact that it came from me was the way I knew I'd get to their hearts. Like, okay, this guy really wants to do, to convince us that this is the Lord's way. And so then the next year, over 100 people showed up at the week of prayer when we launched it. And we just started faithfully investing in that, like the behind the scenes element of what I believe is true, like life-giving New Testament community, which is, a people that are giving themselves to prayer, the breaking of bread, the Acts chapter 2 story of New Testament community. But, and then the Lord's done something beautiful ever since. So we've been able to surround ourselves with amazing friends. My brother Tony is there. They came down and pioneered Chi Alpha at University of Iowa a year after we did at Iowa State. And then we stole him away from Iowa State and had him join us in Ames. And man, it's been a dream. Some old Chi Alpha friends as well from Fargo that are now with us. And yeah, it's been a wild ride, man. but a ton of fun. We feel honored to be a part of what the Lord's doing. And in Fargo, we'll always be home,
Yep.
but Ames has been like now our second home, and the Lord's like knit our heart with that city, and so we feel blessed, man. Yeah.
Love it, man. In conclusion, question I always ask is, what advice would you give to like post-college Drew? So you're just leaving, you and Tanya are headed to Seattle. Like, what advice would you give to him today?
Oh man. That's such a good question. I mean, I would say probably to my younger self, just have patience. For what I always thought was like long periods of time it's just a drop in the bucket. And
Yeah.
I think it's easy for me to get in a hurry and feel like things need to happen right away, when oftentimes it's in the trenches of patience and faithfulness that the Lord's doing the better work and the deeper work. So it'd probably be something to that regard, like just be patient.
Yeah.
Drew. Like, enjoy the moment, be present where the Lord has you, and I don't know, man. That's a great question. I don't know
I love
what
it.
else I would say to myself, but
It'd be another book probably.
yeah, that's right.
No, I appreciate it, Drew, and thanks so much for hanging out with me
today. Yeah, man, it's been an honor.
And being with the podcast people. But I know last night was cool because you guys had a big gathering of, hey, we're in Fargo, your brothers, and a bunch of other people. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about it just this morning as I was driving over here. It's like Drew and I have never lived in the same city, yet it feels like our hearts are tied together. And like I think there's just like this cool kingdom principle there. Like when you not only just we shared a community at different times, but also just the kingdom of God just ties people together.
Yeah, there's a shared DNA that we feel kindred spirits with. So many people that come out of Fargo,
right?
That we just feel like, oh yeah, we could totally be, deep friends with these people. These are like-hearted people. So I feel the same way, man.
And I just left last night, just like so encouraged, like just seeing that. I mean, and I was thinking about it like 12 years ago. There's not a single child in that room.
Yes.
If we were to do that in last night.
I don't know how many kids there were there last night,
40?
but that was wild, man. We have been fruitful and multiplied.
Yes, but it was so good, and it's so good to see you and Tanya.
Yeah, man. So good to see
I know
you,
Tanya and my son, made a bond last night.
Yes, she was talking about him. That's so cool.
Appreciate you. Thanks for being on, and thanks everybody listening, watching the podcast. We just appreciate you being a part of this journey.
Yeah,
Love you, and we'll see you next week. And I'll see you another time.
That's right.
I don't know when that's going to be, but
can't wait, man. I
appreciate
love
it, Drew.
Thanks, man.